Welcome to Lake County Schools Ed Talks, a podcast about all the exciting things going on in our district.
Thank you, Superintendent Kornegay, for joining us for our very first Lake County Schools Ed Talks. We have been talking a lot around here about the school safety referendum that Lake voters are going to see on the ballot in this election. Now, for people who may not know what we're referring to when we talk about this referendum, can you describe what it is and what it does for Lake County schools and for our students?
Well, absolutely. I'd be happy to. So 4 years ago, the voters of Lake County approved a 0.75 tax millage for the purpose of improving and enhancing our school safety and security, as well as ongoing mental health supports for students.
So it's really designed to reach two areas. We often refer to it as a school safety referendum, but it really touches safety and mental health. But why did the district go to the taxpayers 4 years ago to fund these initiatives in these areas? Why couldn't we have worked within the budget we already had?
Following the tragedy at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, the Marjory Stoneman Douglas Act came down from the Florida Department of Education or State Board of Education, mandating that all school districts ensure that there is a school resource deputy or safety officer on every school campus. And while the state gives us some funding, it does not give us enough funding to meet that mandate. For example, we received last year about $2.6 million in school safety funding, but our cost for our resource deputies and safety officers is almost $5 million. So without the additional funding, we would have to cut other programs and services that were already available in order to meet the state mandate. Same thing with our mental health portion of the monies. We know that since our return from the pandemic, that we have seen a growing increase of students that are struggling with their mental health and just some social skills and just struggling emotionally. And so one of the things that we wanted to ensure is that for every student on every campus that we have the right personnel trained and certified in youth mental health in order to meet those needs and to meet the needs of families in our community as we still recover from some of the learning loss and other things that we suffered from the pandemic.
So the Lake County community really came to the rescue for us and for our students, really. That money helped a lot 4 years ago, but now we're back. And why is that? Why are we coming back 4 years later and asking county residents to help us again?
Because again, as I mentioned, these were funds that we didn't have available to us. And we have seen over the past 4 years the significant increase in services and programs that we've been able to provide our students, such as for the first time, thanks to these funds, we have a school nurse on every campus. And the thought of when I arrived here over 5 years ago of not having a nurse available for every student on every campus was very concerning to me. We had a school nurse in every elementary school, but not in our middle and high schools. And so again, as I can't imagine having gone through a pandemic and been able to really support students and families, our teachers and staff through all of that without having that either an LPN or an RN on every campus. And we know we have students with significant medical needs. And just having that frontline individual there who can respond quickly in the event of an emergency, whether a medical emergency or whatever that emergency is I am just very grateful to the voters that they've made that happen for us. We've also been able to add additional school psychologists, our mental health liaisons, which are certified or trained individuals in youth mental health, and increase our social workers who are out in the community helping to bridge some of the issues between school and home and provide resources and connect families to resources.
One other reason that we had that money only for the 4 years, and then we were to come back and to talk to voters again and say, here we are, we're asking again. Accountability was a big part of that. And the way they hold us accountable is to take a look at how we've spent the money. And you've just described a few ways that we have. And I know it's important to you that the residents here really understand that we have handled that money responsibly and that we have done things that have been in the interest of safety and mental health for our schools and for our students. A couple other ways. Talk about you mentioned the school safety officers and the resource deputies, and we've had those before, but what changed with this funding?
Well, what changed is before we did not have one on every campus. We had them on our middle and high school campuses, but typically it was just one. And you think about the size of some of our schools, particularly our high schools, to think that there was only one resource deputy there. In today's age, I would be very concerned about having to reduce the numbers of deputies that are on our campuses, but we've also been able to put them at our elementary schools because the mandate required that by the state. So we have 73 resource deputies and safety officers that are paid for their salaries and benefits through the 0.75.
Wow. Well, I know that makes a lot of parents feel good, knowing that protection is there. Now, we also opened some new schools, but how does that play into safety?
Well, I'll talk about the new schools in just a minute, but what I want to go back is think about where we were 5 years ago when I arrived here. I mentioned that I was very concerned that we didn't have a school nurse on every campus, but one of the other things that was alarming to me was our high rate of out-of-school suspensions that were happening in our schools, because our schools didn't have an in-school suspension program. So when a child misbehaved, there was a code of conduct violation, and they needed to be removed, there really wasn't a place for them to go, and so kids were going home. And we know that we are not going to change behavior and provide supports for kids if they misbehave and we send them home. In fact, I would imagine that some of them misbehave because they want to go home. We know that our parents are working. It's very disruptive to families as well as to our school environment when we're not able to meet the immediate needs of students that are having some behavioral issues. So we needed an in-school suspension program on every campus, someplace that we can remove students to where they can continue to learn academically, get some academic support, because often misbehaviors are occurring because they're frustrated in their classrooms. So we now have, thanks to these funds, an in-school suspension program. We call it PASS. It's a positive alternative to school suspension. We're keeping more kids in school, maintaining academic momentum, get some tutoring, some additional academic supports, as well as some counseling to help change the behavior and to learn and to better cope with the misbehaviors that might be happening in the classroom. So they too have been just an incredible addition to our resources and our supports for kids and for families and for our teachers and our support staff as well.
So the PASS program is in all of our traditional schools. Is that correct?
Yes, every school has a PASS program.
Okay, but we also opened some new schools, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that and how it differs from PASS?
So we started Lake Success Academy. Lake Success is a school that started for students who have committed a higher level disciplinary infraction, and again would either be sent home where they would remain for an extended period of time, or they could be up for expulsion. So for students that are having more significant code of conduct infractions, we are now able to place them at Lake Success Academy. Lake Success Academy has on-site therapists and counselors that are working with students to, again, address the misbehaviors, be able to keep them on track academically, and it's just been life-changing for kids.
That's wonderful. Give those students an alternative, and I would imagine by removing those students from the traditional classroom, even if it's just on a temporary basis, that there's an impact on the classroom that they left as well, right?
Right, because you have a student that's being disruptive in class, and with nowhere for them to go other than home, often they may be returned back to the classroom, and that's not the best situation for that child or for those that are in the classroom that are there focused and learning, and is certainly helpful to teachers.
Now, helping students with their behavioral issues and with their mental health issues, that's also a safety issue, right? My understanding is that if we identify these behavioral issues and the mental health issues and take care of them, address them early on, we could perhaps prevent safety issues from occurring. Is that part of the thinking behind these new programs?
I think all of the programs and the personnel that are in place as a result of the voter-approved referendum all go back to being proactive and identifying students who are having problems, whether it be academically or whether it be behaviorally or emotionally, identifying those early, providing those resources and supports so that they don't become more critical. And so I think that really if I was to talk about what this does, besides all the things I just mentioned about all the resources and supports for children and for families, it is being proactive rather than reactive.
So I think that was a really good explanation of how we have spent the money over the last 4 years. Now, if voters approve the referendum in November, when it will be on the ballot again, what is the plan going forward?
Well, we certainly want to retain all of the personnel that are being paid for by these funds. That includes all of our school nurses, the PASS program, the resource officers, social workers, psychologists, the mental health liaisons. And we also want to make sure that we are able to continue to grow our alternative education program so that every child has a place where their needs can best be met and where we can best serve them. And so that's one of the things we'll look at is what are some continuing needs that students may have and how do we put the right programs in place to make sure that those needs are being addressed. If it's not the traditional classroom environment, how do we provide an alternative where they can thrive and where they can graduate ready for college and the workforce, which is our mission and our vision, just like every other student. This is really just making sure that we are doing everything we can for every student.
Fantastic. Now, on the flip side, what if the referendum doesn't pass? What would be the impact on these programs and on our schools if that happens?
If this doesn't pass, we're going to have some tough decisions to make. We obviously will not be able to keep all of the positions and the programs that are being funded by the referendum. And so we'll have to come together and decide how we want to prioritize the programs and services that we are providing our students, and again, make some really tough decisions.
I know it's been very important to you not to tell people how to vote, but to give them information on what we've done and on what we plan to do so they can make their own independent, informed decision. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, I think that's what we've done today. I think we've answered a lot of questions and provided a lot of information so that Lake County voters can go to the polls informed about what this referendum is asking. And I thank you so much, Superintendent Kornegay, for being our very first guest on Lake County Schools Ed Talks. We look forward to many more conversations with you and with others around the district and in the community, talking about how we work together to fulfill our mission as Lake County Schools. And that is to provide every student with individual opportunities to excel. I also want to thank Lake County parents, employees, and other residents for tuning in today. As a reminder, Election Day is Tuesday, November 8th. Early voting has already begun in Lake County, and it continues through November 5th. And for more information on the referendum, please visit the Lake County Schools website at lake.k12.fl.us. And for information on the election in general, including polling places and hours of operation, please visit the Lake County Supervisor of Elections website at lakevotes.com. Thanks again for joining the conversation, and we'll talk with you again soon on the next edition of Lake County Schools Ed Talks.
Lake County Schools Ed Talks is a production of the Lake County Schools Communications Department, made possible in part by Addition Financial, as well as listeners like you. Please join us again soon.